The news hit like a thunderclap. CharlieKirk, founder of Turning Point USA, was dead. The announcement rippled through every corner of the nation, leaving millions in disbelief. For many, it was a moment that seemed almost impossible, a headline that felt more like fiction than reality. The suddenness of the event, the violence of it, and the high-profile nature of the victim made it a story that would dominate the news cycle for days to come. He was assassinated by a sniper during a campus event at Utah Valley University. The attack was swift, precise, and left the crowd in shock. Students and faculty who had gathered to hear Kirk speak were suddenly thrust into chaos, their lives forever changed by the violence that erupted in what should have been a place of learning and debate. The act was calculated, violent, and sent shockwaves across the country. News outlets scrambled to cover every angle, while social media exploded with speculation, outrage, and sorrow. The sense of vulnerability was palpable, as if the very fabric of public life had been torn. For a moment, the political world fell silent. The usual noise of partisan debate and campaign rhetoric was replaced by a stunned quiet, as politicians and citizens alike tried to process what had happened. It was as if time itself had paused, the nation collectively holding its breath. This was not just another headline, it was a national tragedy. The loss of a prominent political figure in such a public and violent way forced Americans to confront uncomfortable questions about the state of their society. Flags were lowered, and communities across the country mourned together, united in grief. Kirk was polarizing, admired by supporters as a bold leader, criticized by others as a provocateur. His presence on the national stage was impossible to ignore. He inspired fierce loyalty among young conservatives while also drawing intense criticism from his opponents. His speeches often sparked heated debate, and his activism shaped the political landscape for a new generation. But his murder transcended politics, raising questions about the health of American democracy. People from all walks of life gathered at vigils, not just to mourn Kirk, but to express their fears about the direction the country was heading. Was this the new reality, where political violence could erupt anywhere, at any time? The violence felt like an attack on the very idea of peaceful political discourse. The empty debate stages and broken microphones became symbols of a deeper crisis. If even universities, the traditional homes of free speech and debate, were no longer safe, what hope was there for civil dialogue in America? Initial reports were chaotic, confusion and grief spreading rapidly. Rumors swirled, and the search for answers began immediately. Students hugged each other, some in tears, others simply numb. The campus, once alive with the energy of youth, was now shrouded in fear and uncertainty. Social media and news channels erupted as people struggled to process the unthinkable, an assassination at a university. Hashtags trended, conspiracy theories circulated, and the digital world became a battleground of opinions and emotions. The collective shock was overwhelming, and the need for information was urgent. The event became a flashpoint for a nation already deeply divided. Protests erupted in cities across the country, with some calling for unity and others blaming their political adversaries. The assassination intensified existing tensions, threatening to push the country even further apart. Sorrow and fear mingled in the air. What did this mean for the country's future? People gathered in silence, searching for comfort and answers. The sense of loss was profound, but so too was the anxiety about what might come next. Would this tragedy lead to change, or simply more division? As a key MAGA figure, Kirk's death devastated his movement. Young activists who had looked to him for guidance and inspiration now found themselves leaderless, their hopes for the future suddenly uncertain. The organization he built was left to grapple with the loss, unsure how to move forward. He symbolized youthful energy and the future of conservative activism. His rallies were filled with passion and optimism, drawing crowds of students eager to make their voices heard. Kirk's ability to connect with young people was unmatched, and his absence left a void that would be hard to fill. The loss left a void, and the aftermath was a mix of grief and anger. People struggled to make sense of the senseless, searching for meaning in tragedy. Some found solace in community, while others turned to anger, demanding justice and accountability. People demanded answers, someone to blame, a way to make sense of the senseless. Authorities faced mounting pressure to find the perpetrator and explain how such a tragedy could have happened. The search for justice became a rallying cry, echoing across the nation. All eyes turned to the White House. The country looked to its leaders for reassurance, guidance, and a path forward. The pressure on the administration was immense, as the world waited to see how the government would respond. How would President Donald Trump, Kirk's political ally, respond to this crisis? The relationship between the two men had been close, and many wondered what message the president would send to a grieving and divided nation. Would he call for unity, or would the tragedy deepen the political rift? The nation held its breath, waiting for leadership. In living rooms and public squares, people watched and waited, hoping for words that might bring comfort or clarity. The uncertainty was almost unbearable, as the country stood on the edge of a new and uncertain chapter. The next move would shape the country's response to tragedy. The decisions made in the coming hours and days would determine not just how America mourned, but how it moved forward, whether toward healing or deeper division. In the hours after Kirk's death, a heavy silence seemed to settle over the nation. Streets that were once bustling grew quiet, and communities everywhere felt the weight of the tragedy. The news spread rapidly, and people from all walks of life paused to reflect on the shocking loss. Across cities and small towns alike, flags were lowered to half-staff. Vigils sprang up on campuses and in public squares, as people gathered to mourn together. The outpouring of grief was immediate and heartfelt, with individuals from every background expressing their shock and sadness at the sudden loss. For a brief moment, the usual divisions of politics seemed to fade. Leaders from both major parties stood side by side, condemning the violence and calling for unity. Their joint statements reflected a rare sense of bipartisan solidarity, as the nation grappled with the enormity of what had happened. The focus quickly shifted from politics to the human tragedy at the heart of the story: the loss of a young man with a loving family and a promising future. His photograph, surrounded by flowers and candles, became a symbol of the lives touched and the dreams cut short. News anchors spoke in hushed, reverent tones, their voices heavy with emotion. The gravity of the moment was unmistakable, as networks interrupted regular programming to provide continuous coverage and updates. Commentators and analysts debated what this tragedy might mean for the country. Many wondered aloud if this could finally serve as a wake-up call about the dangers of heated rhetoric and political polarization, urging viewers to consider the consequences of divisive language. In the midst of sorrow, there was a glimmer of hope. Many people, united in grief, expressed a longing for a more civil and compassionate public discourse. They hoped that this shared pain might inspire a renewed sense of empathy and understanding across the nation. For Kirk's supporters, the loss was not just a national tragedy, but a deeply personal one. Many young people who had looked up to him as a mentor and leader struggled to process their grief, gathering at memorials to share stories and comfort one another. Tributes poured in from across the country, with Turning Point USA vowing to honor Kirk's legacy by continuing his work. Messages of remembrance and resolve filled social media as supporters pledged to keep his vision alive. Yet, beneath the surface of mourning, anger simmered. Some mourners demanded answers and accountability, their grief mingling with frustration and calls for justice. Kirk's followers looked to President Trump for guidance, gathering at rallies and awaiting his response. Many hoped he would offer words of comfort, while others demanded decisive action. As the nation watched and waited, a sense of uncertainty hung in the air. Would this tragedy bring people together, or would it deepen the divisions already present? The answer for now remained unclear, as America stood at a crossroads, united in grief but uncertain about the path forward. President Trump addressed the nation from the Oval Office, projecting calm and gravity. He called Kirk a patriot and acknowledged the country's shock and sorrow. Trump urged Americans to unite, declaring violence has no place in politics. He promised a swift investigation and justice for Kirk's killer. News outlets noted the unusually unifying tone. For a moment it seemed the president was rising to the occasion. Trump asked the nation to honor Kirk's memory by reaffirming peaceful debate. The speech was broadcast everywhere, offering a brief path forward. His words resonated with a public desperate for leadership. The hope was that this spirit of unity would last, but the country's deep divisions lingered just beneath the surface. The unity didn't last. In the immediate aftermath of the tragedy, there was a brief sense of togetherness, a rare moment when political differences seemed to fade, if only for a moment. People from all sides paused to mourn, hoping for a collective healing. But just a day later, Trump's tone shifted sharply in a video statement. The solemnity of his initial response gave way to a more combative stance as he addressed the nation with a new message. The call for healing was replaced by a call for blame. Instead of focusing on unity, Trump redirected the conversation, pointing fingers and escalating tensions. He accused Democrats and the media of creating a toxic atmosphere that, in his view, led to Kirk's assassination. Trump's words were forceful, suggesting that his political opponents bore responsibility for the violence. Yet Trump ignored his own history of inflammatory rhetoric. His past statements, often charged and divisive, were left unmentioned as he shifted the blame outward. The tragedy quickly became a partisan weapon, reigniting old divisions and fueling heated debates across the country. Commentators and politicians on both sides seized the moment to advance their narratives. His allies amplified the accusations, framing the act as the inevitable result of left-wing rhetoric. Conservative media outlets echoed Trump's claims, intensifying the blame game. The conversation shifted rapidly from mourning the loss to assigning guilt. Social media exploded with accusations as people took sides and pointed fingers, deepening the national divide. Trump's words gave his supporters a new target: political adversaries. Rallies and online forums buzzed with renewed energy as blame was cast and anger redirected. The country, briefly united in grief, was pulled apart again. Old wounds reopened, and communities found themselves more divided than before, as the tragedy became another front in the ongoing political battle. Trump vowed to use his office to go after those he blamed for the climate of hate. He promised action, signaling a shift from words to potential government intervention. Critics saw this as a threat to use state power against opponents, warning that such rhetoric could undermine democratic norms and escalate political conflict even further. The moment for healing was over. Political war had begun. The tragedy, instead of uniting the nation, became a catalyst for deeper polarization, setting the stage for even more intense battles ahead. The media's reaction split along familiar lines. Left-leaning outlets condemned Trump's escalation, calling it a failure of leadership. They argued he exploited tragedy for political gain. Right-leaning media defended Trump, framing his words as a necessary warning about leftist rhetoric. Americans now lived in two realities, each reinforced by their chosen news sources. The media didn't just report the division, they deepened it. Any hope for unity was drowned out by partisan noise. Amid the chaos, Jimmy Kimmel used his late-night platform to deliver a searing critique of Trump. He condemned Kirk's killing and called out the divisive reactions. Kimmel accused Trump of hypocrisy, noting his own history of inflammatory attacks. He contrasted Trump's response with how past presidents might have unified the nation. Kimmel's monologue was an emotional plea for decency and leadership. The segment went viral, resonating with millions. On social media, Kimmel called for unity against senseless violence, not political warfare. He extended condolences to Kirk's family and all victims of gun violence. His voice cut through the noise, echoing a widespread desire for healing. The Trump administration quickly fired back at Kimmel. In an official statement, they accused Kimmel and the media of fueling division. The White House insisted Trump was warning of real dangers, not dividing the nation. They painted Trump as a defender against a hostile establishment. The rebuttal reinforced Trump's core message to his base. The conflict with Kimmel became another front in the culture war. The administration's aggressive style left no room for nuance. In the wake of tragedy, the political battlefield only deepened. Observers saw Trump's reaction as part of a familiar pattern. He began with a somber statement, then quickly pivoted to political grievance. The tragedy was reframed as the fault of his enemies. This approach energized his base but deepened national wounds. Traditionally, presidents act as healers in times of crisis. Trump's critics argued he rejected this role, choosing division over unity. The consequences are profound, eroding shared identity and social cohesion. Every event, even tragedy, became partisan. The response to Kirk's death wasn't an anomaly, it was the system at work. The pattern undermined democracy's foundations. The nation was left more fractured than before. The aftermath of Kirk's assassination was a lost opportunity for unity. The initial shock could have brought the nation together. Instead, leaders chose conflict over healing. Critics warned that Trump's threats to use government power against opponents set a dangerous precedent. The line between order and suppression blurred. The tragedy risked justifying a crackdown on civil liberties. The lesson: when tragedy becomes a political weapon, democracy itself is at risk. The loss of unity may prove even greater than the loss of one man.